يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر 2020.
Good afternoon, you're watching the English newscast on Future Television. I'm Linda Tamim and these are today's top stories. The world begins to welcome 2015. Millions gather in New Zealand and Australia to watch spectacular fireworks displays. Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri deems 2015 to be the year of Lebanese oil as he calls for the completion of all measures to allow Lebanon to start tapping into its offshore reserve. And Health Minister Wael Abu Faoud calls for a specialized court to deal with matters related to food safety and public health. Fireworks lit up the skies of Sydney over the city's harbour in the annual display as the Australian city was one of the first to celebrate the new year. Event organisers say an estimated 1.5 million people gathered at Sydney Harbour. This year's theme was Inspire, and 7 tons of fireworks were set off on the Harbour Bridge, the Sydney Opera House, on barges on the water, and at different locations throughout the city. The display was accompanied by music. The New Zealanders were amongst the first in the world to usher in 2015 with a giant clock on Auckland's landmark Sky Tower, counting down the minutes until the new year. A huge fireworks display was then launched from the top of the tower at midnight. Check it out. And in Lebanon, Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri has deemed 2015 to be the year of Lebanese oil, as he called for the completion of all measures that would allow Lebanon to start tapping into its offshore reserves. Berri reportedly stressed the importance of completing the oil file, saying that oil and gas revenues contribute to strengthening the common interests of the Lebanese and resolving deprivation in the country. The speaker noted that the oil and gas sector could secure more than 60,000 jobs, as he renewed his call for the issuance of oil and gas decrees as soon as possible. The decrees would set the number of blocks and establish the revenue mechanism as well as a tax policy for gas and oil exploration. Last August, the Lebanese government postponed the first round of licensing for offshore gas exploration for the 5th time due to political disagreements, raising concerns that the continued delay would discourage international oil firms. Lebanon and Israel both lay claim to roughly 850 square kilometers of maritime area thought to have high potential for natural gas extraction. Health Minister Wael Abu Faoud has called for a specialized court to deal with matters related to food safety and public health, adding he will meet with Justice Minister Ashraf Rifi to discuss the matter. The minister's announcement came during a press conference at his office after he revealed that a massive amount of expired sugar was found in Tripoli's port. Abu Faoud said he referred the file to the state prosecutor and said he will call on Rifi to take exceptional measures against the violators. On another note, the minister has met with the families of the 25 captive Lebanese servicemen and confirmed that negotiations with the captors have taken a serious turn and were ongoing. A spokesman for the families says all political factions have expressed their acceptance of a deal to trade the captives for Islamist inmates detained in Rumi prison. He also reiterated the family's pledge to maintain secrecy over the file as they join the government's media blackout over negotiation efforts. Lebanese forces leader Samir Jaja has voiced his commitment to the anticipated talks with his political foe, Free Patriotic Movement chief Michel Aoun. Jaja said the dialogue with Aoun is serious and will not be limited to the issue of the presidency, and talks will serve to ease political tensions. In that view, the Lebanese forces chief likened his forthcoming dialogue with Aoun to talks between the Future Movement and Hezbollah. Aoun and Jaja are the country's 2 main presidential candidates, but neither has enough support in parliament to win the election. Jaja said those boycotting election sessions won't be able to continue disrupting the vote forever, in reference to March 8 lawmakers who have blocked the presidential vote by boycotting parliamentary sessions. Marada movement leader MP Sleiman Frangieh has stressed that his March 8 coalition will not accept the election of a so-called centrist president, hoping Free Patriotic Movement chief MP Michel Aoun will manage to win the presidential seat. Frangieh's comments came after a meeting with Aoun in Rabieh. Asked about reports that Saudi Arabia has approved of his election as president, Frangieh said he was not aware of such a development, underlining that he will maintain his support for Aoun's candidacy as long as his ally stays in the presidential race. Separately, the Marada leader welcomed the expected dialogue between Aoun and his electoral rival, Lebanese Forces Chief Samir Jaja, as he noted that things are still in the beginning stages. And coming up next, the UN Security Council rejects a Palestinian resolution calling for peace with Israel. That and more after the break. Welcome back. The UN Security Council has rejected a Palestinian resolution calling for peace with Israel within a year and an end to Israel's occupation by 2017. The resolution failed to muster the minimum 9 yes votes required in the Council for adoption. Palestinian ambassador to the UN, Riyad Mansour, criticized the world body for the failure of the vote. Following the vote, the U.S., Israel's closest ally, reiterated its opposition to the draft resolution. U.S. Ambassador to the UN, Samantha Power, said the resolution undermined efforts to achieve 2 states for 2 people.
It is high time to end this abhorrent Israeli occupation and impunity that has brought our people so much suffering and that has caused so many crises, sown so much instability and anger throughout our region, and continues to seriously undermine regional and global peace and security. It is thus most regrettable that the Security Council remains paralyzed and unable to act to uphold its own responsibilities in this regard, with all of the implication this has for peace and security in the Middle East and beyond. The repeated request for us to wait and wait and wait while our people are suffering, while our people are besieged, while our land is being colonized, and while the 2-state solution is being destroyed and the prospect for peace are evaporating, must understand that such requests are not viable under these circumstances and unsustainable. Those eager to save the 2-state solution must act and cannot continue to make excuses for Israel and to permit and thus be complicit in its immoral and illegal behavior. The Security Council must act. We will therefore continue to call on the Council to uphold its charter duties and will spare no effort in this regard in the coming year.
We voted against this resolution not because we are comfortable with the status quo. We voted against it because we know what everyone here knows as well. Peace will come from hard choices and compromises that must be made at the negotiating table. Today's staged confrontation in the UN Security Council will not bring the parties closer to achieving a 2-state solution. We voted against this resolution not because we are indifferent to the daily hardships or the security threats endured by Palestinians and Israelis, but because we know that those hardships will not cease and those threats will not subside until the parties reach a comprehensive settlement achieved through negotiations.
We consider President Abbas a man of peace and understand the pressure that the Palestinian leadership has been under to act and their frustration at the lack of progress. But we are disappointed that the normal and necessary negotiation did not take place on this occasion. The United Kingdom supports much of the content of the draft resolution. It is therefore with deep regret that we abstained on it. The United Kingdom stands by the parameters I set out here in 2011 and which were reiterated by the European Union Foreign Affairs Council conclusions of July 2014. Our views on settlements, including in East Jerusalem, are clear. They are illegal under international law, an obstacle to peace, and seriously damage prospects for a 2-state solution. All settlement activity, including in East Jerusalem, should cease immediately.
At least 20 Houthi rebels have been killed in a suicide bomb attack at a gathering in Ib city of central Yemen, while fighting in Rada district has killed at least 34 others. Reports say today's large explosion at the cultural center also wounded the governor of Ib province. Houthis were gathered to celebrate the anniversary of Prophet Muhammad's birthday. And now for news around the world in brief, Saudi Arabia's ailing King Abdullah bin Abdulaziz, 91, has been admitted to hospital for medical checks in Riyadh. The king's age and frequent hospitalization have raised concerns about the future leadership of the key oil-producing country, with rumors spreading that his health is deteriorating. Stormy weather has forced Indonesian search teams to suspend the recovery of the bodies of 162 people aboard the ill-fated AirAsia plane, which crashed into the Java Sea. Reports say Indonesia's search and rescue agency obtained a sonar image. It says maybe the body of the missing plane at the bottom of the Java Sea. 7 bodies had now been recovered, including a woman in crew uniform. Italian Coast Guards have saved at least 728 migrants from a cargo ship near the Greek island of Corfu after its crew apparently disappeared. The migrants, mainly from Syria, arrived in the Gallipoli port of southeast Italy this morning, where emergency crew, Italian Red Cross workers and police were at the scene. Veteran Tunisian politician Beji Caid Essebsi was sworn in as the country's new president as part of the final step of a transition to democracy after an uprising that ousted autocrat Zine El Abidine Ben Ali in 2011. The ceremony was held just over 4 years after the start of the protests, which eventually unseated Ben Ali. Essebsi, a former Ben Ali official, beat rival Munsif Marzouki with 55.68% of the vote against 44.32% in a runoff ballot, the country's first free presidential elections held earlier this month. A former parliament speaker under Ben Ali, Essebsi recast himself as an experienced technocrat. His secular party Nidat Tunis, called for Tunisia, profited from a backlash against the post-revolt Islamist government, which many voters blamed for turmoil after 2011. In a brief speech on state television following his election victory, Essebsi promised to be a president for all Tunisians. This marks the end of our bulletin for today. Now for a reminder of our top stories. The world begins to welcome 2015. Millions gather in New Zealand and Australia to watch spectacular fireworks displays. Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri deems 2015 to be the year of the Lebanese oil, as he calls for the completion of all measures to allow Lebanon to start tapping into its offshore reserve. And finally, Health Minister Wael Abu Fawad calls for a specialized court to deal with matters related to food safety and public health. Those were your last headlines from us for 2014. I'm Linda Tamim, and on behalf of our team, I wish you all a very happy 2015. Enjoy the celebrations and see you next year.
يجب أن يستقيل في الساعات القادمة 20 أكتوبر 2014.